Yes, you're
Okay, this is the
you're
new
audible.
reality, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much, Rumana. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Essam Yassin Mohammed. I'm the climate change research leader with WorldFish based in Penang, Malaysia. I would like to thank you all for joining us in this very important event that's brought to you by WorldFish and all the partners involved to discuss this very important issue. Aquatic food systems, which entails fisheries, aquaculture, and other food production systems that grow and survive in the water, employ millions of people. They generate their means of livelihood for millions of people, particularly in the developing world, but also millions upon millions of people rely on this food resource to survive. However, this very important resource of production systems under immense pressure from overexploitation of resources, pollution, degradation of the habitats, and conversion as well. However, one of the major impacts or threats that this production system faces is climate change due to acidification of the ocean, global warming, and consequent changes in habitats as well. And if we look at who are the ones who are primarily impacted by these effects and who cannot insulate themselves from all these impacts of climate change, are those vulnerable communities with limited financial and technical capabilities to adapt to the changing climate. And this poses a threat to our food production system, particularly aquatic food production systems. And therefore, the question is, what role for innovation, what role for technology to alleviate these threats from climate change and build resilience of the millions of particularly smallholder aquatic food producers? So one of the factors is the lack of the variability or the lack of knowledge on in being able to predict the climate change impacts or weather patterns that would certainly affect aquatic food production systems, particularly aquaculture, as that's the focus for today's discussion. Progress in weather and subseasonal or seasonal forecasting has significantly increased the information available to reduce the exposure to extreme climatic events and also to manage day-to-day operations of fish farmers and for reducing climate variability and those associated risks as well. Therefore, the most important point to take is this timely, reliable, and contextualized climate information profoundly does sort of, affect the risks associated with climate change in aquaculture sector that underpin food security of the millions of people just mentioned earlier. However, there is a gap here. The gap is that climate services or research with climate services have largely focused on land-based agriculture, particularly in Bangladesh. Therefore, information about the specific needs for climate services in the aquaculture sector remains scarce despite its potential. Therefore, in light of this today, this session is going to discuss this very new and emerging field of climate services for aquaculture. It will highlight how climate impacts or climate change impacts are affecting the aquaculture sector, leading to fish loss that are detrimental to nutrition and food security, and will present the state of the research on climate products to support this sector. So on that note, I would like to welcome you all to this very important session. And I look forward to hear more and learn from our distinguished speakers today, and also from the active participation of the participants who have taken time out to join us in this very important discussion today. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for this warm welcome and sort of setting the scene of our discussion today. So before moving forward, I would like to request you all to write down your name, affiliation, and organization along with the email in the chat box so that we get to know each other. So now I will briefly tell you about the project. Currently, we have been working on to develop climate information services for aquaculture. WorldFish, jointly with CIMMYT, ICRISAT, IRI, and Bangladesh Meteorological Department, has been working on developing and enhancing climate information services for aquaculture. Under the Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security Program funded project entitled Capacitating Farmers and Fishers to Manage Climate Risks in South Asia. So within the scope of this project, we are currently working in Bangladesh and also in India. There has been very little focus so far on fisheries and aquaculture climate services. So we will be presenting our research findings during the session on this very new and emerging field of research. As our first collaborative effort, we organized a training dialogue in 2019 at Bangladesh Meteorological Department, jointly with the project partners, which I already mentioned, a wide range of stakeholders from government, NGOs, private and public sectors joined our 5-day-long training dialogue and identified their needs for having climate services. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Melody Braun, a Senior Staff Associate at IRI, to briefly provide an overview of the training dialogue. So over to you, Melody.
Thank you, Rumana. Okay, let me see. I'll share my screen. Yes, here we go. Okay. Oof, I don't know. No, sorry. This is always tricky. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, can you see that? I think that's working.
Yes, Melody, we can see it. We can see it perfectly. Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. Very glad to be here. Thank you all for coming. So thanks also Rumana and Essam and Tasfia for the introductions. So very briefly, why are we talking about climate services and what do we mean by climate services? We all note some common challenges. There's I think a common climate challenge that a lot of us are facing, which is a disconnect between the field, what's happening in the field and the way people in the field are responding to climate impacts and the kind of climate information that's being produced at the level of the national Met services. Often people are in the field and they know what impacts of climate change they're facing, but they don't necessarily know how to respond to it or what information is adequate or available. And then at the level of the national Met services, people are experts on climate information. They know what's available, they know the limitations, but they don't necessarily know in details what are the needs on the ground. So there's a disconnect at that level that is making it harder to address properly the impacts of climate change. There's also a big development challenge that we note, particularly in Bangladesh, but in many countries as well, which is a duplication of efforts between projects, the lack of coordination between different initiatives, and often a lack of continuity after project funding ends. So climate services are trying to solve those two challenges. And the way we define climate services is through 4 pillars that you can see on the slide. The first pillar is the generation of climate information, and it's really about generating the best possible climate information or data product based on available science. And then the second pillar is the translation. So how do you turn that climate information into something that is relevant for people in different sectors, for specific sectors like aquaculture? Then the third pillar is the transfer. So how do you communicate that translated information to the right beneficiaries at the right time in the right format that they need? And eventually all of that is to promote the use of that climate information. So the integration of that translated information into decision-making processes, policies, plans, national plans, etc. So with that in mind, we started talking about climate services. We IRI started talking about climate services a few years ago when we initiated a project called ACTODAY, Adapting Agriculture to Climate Today for Tomorrow. And we had meetings with ICAD, the Bangladesh Met Department, and CIMMYT, and a number of other stakeholders. And we realized that there was a need for a platform to open a discussion about climate services. And so we created the Bangladesh Academy for Climate Services, which really has a goal of convening different stakeholders around the idea of climate services, identifying the needs, the gaps, and then developing training materials, capacity building, and then supporting the development of climate services. So really the goal is to create a network of individuals that work across those 4 pillars of climate services that we saw, and helping build the capacity of this network of people to make sure that they're able to identify the needs, analyze and communicate the climate impacts that they're facing, identify what relevant information would help them make better decisions, and then how to develop tailored climate services. So we had 3 trainings so far, 1 per year, 3 major trainings, 1 in 2018 on climate services for food security, 1 in 2019, which is the focus, which is particularly relevant for this session, which was climate services for aquaculture and co-organized with WorldFish and the CAFSA project. And then 1 in 2020 on index insurance, which was remote. So the format of those 2 first trainings on climate services was the same. We follow a number of key principles. The first one is that it's inquiry-based learning, which means we put the participants' experience in their daily life, in their daily job before anything else, because the learning emerges from a participant's personal experience more than from a theoretical lecture in a classroom. You need to create personal connections with people's experience so that they can learn better. The second principle is two-way learning. We think it's not a one-way communication where facilitators just explain something to participants, but rather both the participants and the teachers learn from each other, because the participants are people who are experts in their own field. And so in the case of aquaculture, for example, we had people from the whole aquaculture value chain, some farmers, some people working in research, some people working in hatcheries, some people working at the government level, and each of them is an expert in their own field, and each of them can provide information about the needs from the ground so that we work together to then identify what are the needs to develop climate services. The third principle is the cooperative learning. We really put a strong emphasis on group exercises, and when possible, transdisciplinary is better, because participants learn better when they are able to work in a group to solve a problem. And when it's transdisciplinary, everyone can bring their own perspective, so it's even more rich of a learning. And then the last principle is the application in practice. And we do either a day in the field during that week of training, or at least a day of hands-on exercises, because it's very different to understand something by just listening to it when it's explained to you, and to be able to actually replicate it and adapt it in a different situation. So it's usually a 5-day training, 5 modules following those principles. The first module is understanding participants' decisions, then unpacking the basics of climate science, integrating climate science into those decisions that the participants are making, then application in practice, and at the end, there's a feedback discussion, and then each participant makes a personal plan about how they're going to apply the content in their jobs. So this is just a bit more about the format. So as you can see, on the first day, the flow of the training really goes from the participants to the facilitators, because we want to hear from the participants about what are the kind of decisions that they make in their daily lives, in their daily job, how is that impacted by climate, and maybe what are some of the climate information that they are already using or not, and if so, why, etc. And then on the second day, we take examples of that and we start talking about the basics of climate science. And so in that module, the flow goes from the facilitators to the participants. We talk about the key principles of climate science, the terminology, some of the limitations and opportunities. We have some quizzes. Then on the third day, we connect those 2 first modules together. And so the flow goes both ways. And that's where we're really exploring concrete ways of integrating the science into the decisions. So we start looking into specific tools that exist, maybe successful examples of climate services in other countries or in similar contexts. And we talk about opportunities and challenges or limitations of putting that in practice in the context that we're in. So in this case, in the context of Bangladesh. Then on day 4, it's the application in practice. So again, it's a flow that goes both ways. And here usually we go a bit more in depth into some of the tools that we've explored. And we have some exercises that people work on in groups, either on the computer, if it's online or like computer tools, or in the field, if we have a field day. We did one of each in the first 2 trainings. And then each group prepares a presentation. So they have a problem to solve or an exercise to solve together, and then they prepare a presentation for the last day. And then finally, on the last day, we talk about, the group presents their work and we talk about their feedback on the different tools. And then each of them prepares a personal plan of how they think they can apply the learning in their day job, in their own job, and how they think we can keep in touch in the future. So this is the format that we've been following. The trainings are always taking place, well, when we could have physical training, they were taking place at BMD, the Bangladesh Met Department, who was kind enough to provide not only their great conference room, but also a lot of their staff. And so that was always the highlight of the training. Participants were saying how exciting and important it was for them to have a chance to interact so much with BMD, understand better all the information that they're producing, etc. And as I was saying, there's a lot of group work, there's a lot of interactive exercises where we want to learn from participants about what their decision systems look like. Finally, this is just a quick example of a BACS training output. This one was from the aquaculture training, where we talked about the different types of stakeholders. We identified the type of climate-related impacts that each of them was facing in their jobs, in their life. Then we talked about the kind of action that they could put in place in advance of a climate hazard. Like, how could they prevent the climate hazard, and how much in advance would they need a specific type of information? And then we identified also at what level they would need that information. So with that kind of, once we have identified that kind of information, if a climate expert has access to that, then they can support, because they know what kind of information can be available a week in advance, a month in advance, 3 months in advance. They can communicate about the kind of uncertainty associated with that kind of data, etc. So this is just an example of one of the training outputs, but if you want more information, if you're interested in the outputs of the training, we have a report that is available on the WorldFish website, and we can share it with you at the end of the conference, at the end of the session. And that's it for me. So I'm handing it back to Rumana. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Melody. So do you like to play the video now, or?
We can.
I mean, the
yeah.
documentary you wanted to share, so you can.
Sure, we can do it now, and then I think we also have some participants to the training who can talk a bit more about it.
I'm waiting for Mr. Rakibul Islam from BFRI to share his experience. So in the meantime, I think you can share the video.
Sure. Okay. So let me do that then. So I'll share again. Okay. So here we go. So this is a video that IRI produced after that training last year. And so you'll see a bit more about the content and how it's applied in the field. Let's see. Let me know if that works.
Yes.
Does it work?
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
আমার নাম শ্যামলী রানী। আমাদের এই দেশের লবণ এলাকা এই বৃষ্টির অপেক্ষায় আমরা বসে থাকি। বৃষ্টিকাল আসলে পরে তরকারি রুই সেই বেড়ির ফাড়ে, আর বেশি বৃষ্টি হলে তরকারি গাছরুলি মারা যায়। আমার বাবা আগে মানে জাল খাবার তো হেই আমি দেখতাম, দেওয়ার পরে তো চিন্তা করলাম যে আমি একটু মারি পারি কিনা। এই পিলে মারতে মারতে শিখে গেছি। রুই মাছ আছে, কাতলা মাছ আছে, তেলাপুটি আছে, জাপানি পুঁটি আছে, আপনার কাঁকড়া আছে, চিংড়ি মাছ আছে, বাগদা, হরিঙ্গে চিংড়ি, চামটি, হেও আছে, বিভিন্ন মিনের কাপ আছে, বিভিন্ন প্রকারের মাছ ফেলানো হয়েছে। ওই আপনার বাগদা, হরিঙ্গে, গলা চিংড়ি এত বিক্রি করলে কিছু টাকা পয়সা হয়, চিন্তা করি এই টাকা পয়সা বিক্রি করে যদি টাকা বাজারঘাট করা যাবে, চাইল টাইল আনা যাবে, কাঁচা কাঁচার কাগজ কলম আনা যাবে, ওদের একটু জামা কাপড় বই খাতা হেও দেওয়া লাগে, সেগুলো একটু মানে চিন্তা করি সেইভাবে বিক্রি করে সেইভাবে করে দিই ওকে। এই বৃষ্টিকালের সময় তো আমাদের দেশে মানে তরকারি বা মাছ টাছ এগুলো ভালো হয়, আর ওই সময় তো লবণে মানে লবণে যা দিই সব মারা যায়, আমরা কিছু খাতেও পারি না, আর দেয়া তো দূরের কথা।
Bangladesh is recognized as one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change in the world. A big part of the country is a low-lying area, and because Bangladesh is so densely populated, there's not necessarily a lot of space. It's a country with 160 million inhabitants in a very small area. That's what I find fascinating about it, because despite being heavily affected, they are one of the leads on adaptation. They are facing all these impacts already. They know it's only going to get worse, and so they are actively trying to find solutions. The goal of ACTODAY is to develop climate services to support the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 2, which is to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. And the way to do that in Bangladesh is to work closely with a range of different partners, going all the way from the providers of climate information to the end users and the policymakers working on food security. There's really a need for information on climate variability and on shorter timescale, because really decision makers don't really make decisions for the end of the century. They make decisions for tomorrow, for next week, for next season, for next year.
We all know that climate change is going to affect food security worldwide. We know that climate change is happening right now. And because climate change is going to affect our food production, we need to understand how climate is actually affecting. If anyone wants to understand that, he has to have some data, because data actually informs him whether it is affecting and how it is going to affect. So if you think of data, then who are the data providers for any country? So they are the MET services. So this is the reason, if you really want to address climate change in terms of food security, it's really important that MET services are involved in this process, so that you can actually understand what is happening by getting there or analyzing their data.
With the Bangladesh Academy for Climate Services, we organized a training in 2018 that was focusing on people from different sectors working on food security. In October 2019, we organized the second edition of the BACS training, and this one was focusing on people from the aquaculture value chain, so looking at climate services for aquaculture. So this training was different from the first one because it was focusing on one specific sector, and we had people coming from universities working on research on aquaculture. Then we had people working across the value chain, some people working for the private sector in hatcheries, and some people working for NGOs. We had farmers coming from the field.
আমি বিপ্রদাস শিকদার, আমি বাগেরহাট থেকে আসছি। আমি এখানে এসে আবহাওয়া জলবায়ুর উপরে 5 দিনের ট্রেনিংয়ে আমি অনেক কিছুই শিখেছি।
আমি চিত্তরঞ্জন হাওলাদার, আমি বাগেরহাট থেকে আসছি। আমি 5 দিন যাবত আবহাওয়ার উপরে যে ট্রেনিং পেয়েছি, এই ট্রেনিং দিয়ে খুব ভালোই আমি বুঝতে পেরেছি। আর এই আবহাওয়া খবর আদি শুনে আমাদের মাছ চাষ, কৃষি চাষ, সবজি চাষ আমরা করব, এতে আমরা ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হব না।
What was fascinating was that we had all these people in the room and we started asking them what are the climate impacts that they're experiencing and what are some of the solutions that they're implementing to prevent those impacts or to cope with those impacts. And it was sort of an aha moment for a lot of them because they were saying, you know, we've worked on aquaculture our entire career and we've never had that discussion before. And we can't believe this hasn't happened earlier. We have to start talking more about how we can use climate information to anticipate some of the impacts. We are experiencing a lot of losses because of climate impacts, but just we didn't think that there was anything we could do about it. There's definitely a big interest, I mean, from farmers and from private sector for sure, because private sector is losing money, farmers are losing food and money. And then from the government as well, it led to really interesting conversations with the Department of Fisheries and the Bangladesh Fisheries Research Institute.
This climate service related on aquaculture training is very helpful to us because we are coming from Department of Fisheries.
We are on the way to formulate our national fisheries policy. I think that we will include climatic conditions so deeply in our policy formulation.
This training has opened our eyes that we will propose our management, our planners, even up to the government level, to include this sorts of training for our fish farmers, even government institutional peoples, those who are dealing with fish farmers and others, they also should be involved in this sorts of training.
It's very exciting to see that there's so much interest and that they really feel like it's something that's been missing and that they want to develop. So what we did for both of the trainings that worked really well both times is that the trainings are hosted at the Bangladesh Meteorological Department, and BMD is making a number of people available during the whole week to really interact with the participants. And that's something that participants of both trainings have found absolutely amazing because they never thought they would have a chance to interact with BMD. Those are, you know, high-level government people, they're very busy, but also because for participants, I think it was eye-opening to realize how much is BMD doing, how much information is out there that they're not necessarily aware of, you know, how much BMD is really trying to understand what the needs of the different sectors are and how they can better respond to it. I think it was extremely valuable once again to have the training at BMD to show the support from BMD and how much they're really trying to reach out to the users and understand better what is needed.
সমস্যাগুলো কিন্তু এই কিছুদিন আগে আমরা ওয়ার্ল্ড ফিশের মাধ্যমে একটা ট্রেনিং করি ঢাকায়। ওখানে ট্রেনিং করার পরে আবহাওয়ার উপরে অনেক তথ্যই আমরা পাই, কিন্তু আসলে যে তথ্যগুলো পাওয়াই কিন্তু আমরা সেগুলো আমাদের কাজে লাগাইতে পারবো, এটাই আমার একটা ধারণা। যাই হোক, আমরা ট্রেনিং করে আসার পরে এলাকায় কিন্তু সেটা ফার্মারদের কাছে বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করতেছি, বুঝাইতেছি। সেটা কিন্তু উঠান বৈঠকের মাধ্যমে
বার্ডস ট্রেনিং এ গিয়েছি। এই ট্রেনিং এর মাধ্যমে জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের মাধ্যমে কোন সময় কিভাবে জলবায়ু হবে এই জেনে জেনে আমাদের কৃষিকাজ এবং মৎস্য চাষের করতে পারবো এবং উপকৃত হব।
এই ওয়ার্ল্ড ফিশ থেকে আমরা কিভাবে সবজি চাষ আগেটা জানতাম না, এখন আমরা জানতে পেরেছি। তারপর আমার হাজবেন্ড কিছুদিন আগে ঢাকায় জলবায়ু সম্পর্কে ট্রেনিং করে আসছে। সেও বাড়িতে এসে আমাদের এই জলবায়ু সম্পর্কে, তারপর সবজি চাষের সম্পর্কে, মৎস্য চাষের সম্পর্কে আমাদের অনেক কথা বলেছে। তারপর আমাদের কিভাবে এটা মৎস্য চাষ আরো আমরা ভালোভাবে অনেক কথাই বলেছে। তারপর আমাদের আশেপাশে সবাইকেও ডেকে এর সম্পর্কে ধারণা দিয়েছে।
এটা আমার একটা মানে ইচ্ছা আছে আর কি, মানে ট্রেনিং করার পরে আর কি, আমি ট্রেনিংটা পাওয়ার পরে আমার যেটা ইচ্ছা সেটা আমি এখানে আমার কাছাকাছি অথবা আমার আশপাশে প্রথম আমি নিজ এলাকা থেকেই শুরু করব। যারা ফার্মার আছে, যারা আমার মতো কৃষিকাজ করে, তাদেরকে নিয়ে একটা মানে সমিতি, সমবায় সমিতি এই ধরনের কিছু একটা করব এবং তাদেরকে আমি এই ক্লাইমেটের যে সুবিধা অসুবিধাগুলি এবং আমাদের কি কি সিদ্ধান্ত নেওয়া যায়, মানে বিএমবির ইয়ার থেকে কি আমরা কিভাবে বিএমবির ইয়াটা বুঝবো, তাদের ডিক্লারেশনটা বুঝবো, বা তারা কি বলতে মানে কতদিন পরে আসবে, বা কখন এটা আমরা তো কখন চাষবাসা শুরু করব, বৃষ্টি বেশি রেইনফল হলে কতদিন পরে শুরু করব, এগুলো তাদেরকে আমি এই তথ্যগুলি মানে খুব ভালোভাবে তাদেরকে আর কি বলবো। এটা আসলে কোঅপারেশন না থাকলে একা একা এক একজনের কাছে বোঝানোটা অনেক কষ্টকর একটা ব্যাপার, কিন্তু একসঙ্গে থাকলে, কোঅপারেশনে থাকলে এটা খুব তাড়াতাড়ি সবাইকে বোঝানো যায় এবং সবাইকে কার কি সমস্যা আছে সেটা ওইখানে একসঙ্গে উঠোন বৈঠক যেটা আর কি, এর মাধ্যমে সমাধান করাও সম্ভব আর কি মোটামুটি।
সেই জিনিসটা আরো আমরা প্রচার করতেছি যে আমরা আবহাওয়ার যে খবরাখবর সেগুলো কোন কায়দায় পাবো, কোন কায়দায় পাইলে আমরা উপকৃত হব, সেগুলো সেই কৃষকদের বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করতেছি।
Okay, I'm going to stop here because it's almost done anyway. And I'm going to hand it back to Rumana or Tasfia.
Yeah, thank you, Melody. I think we have got a flavor of our training dialogue. So at this moment, we have with us Mr. Rakibul Islam, Senior Scientific Officer from Bangladesh Fisheries Research Institute, and also Mr. Alamgir, Director Planning and Implementation from Krishibid Fisheries Limited, who joined the training dialogue. We will also hear from them. So first, I'd like to request Rakibul Islam from BFRI to share his thoughts on climate services for fisheries and aquaculture. So Rakib bhai, floor is yours.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you, Rakib bhai. Please go ahead.
Very good morning and assalamu alaikum. Hope you're doing well. Nice to meet you all after a long since. It was a very effective and fantastic event you have been organizing since the last couple of years, and its involvement to aquaculture been the greatest spurt for us because in aquaculture, all the commodities living in the water are very much susceptible to the environmental parameters. So for the better production, better efficacy, better earnings, and after all, for the successful aquaculture program, there is no alternative way other than having better and sound idea of the climate. Due to different issues nowadays, we don't find the climate behaving very much. In sometimes it is not congenial, in sometimes it has become too rush and too rude to the aquaculture commodities as well as the crop commodities, and our farmers are facing many issues regarding these. As specifically for shrimp, they are very much vulnerable and susceptible to environmental parameters. So any kind of rapid changes in water quality due to environmental parameters have a greater impact on the production and successful event of aquaculture farming. From that point of view, I very much appreciate this kind of initiatives, and since the training program organized at BMD, I am very much grateful to BMD authorities for consistently providing us the information data. And the good thing is our institute is now going to develop one application, Android-based application, along with that messaging service, short message service for the farmers based on the climatic information, so that we can give them some earlier coverage of the climatic data, and we have some analysis regarding what could be the impacts on aquaculture based on those climatic information. So we will be launching that applications very soon, so that it will be a very helpful event for the farmers. So that is one of the practical output of the training I have attended with you in Dhaka last year, hopefully. And we are also trying to inform our farmers and different stakeholders in different training we are organizing nowadays, so that we are encouraging those farmers to have insight about the climatic data regarding their pond preparation, their stocking, and considering the period of harvesting and treatments. So this has been a very great opportunity for us to learn about these sorts of activities you're carrying out on this regard. I think I wish you very success, and hopefully we'll be able to work together furthermore on this issue to boost up the collaboration and ultimately the betterment of the aquaculture industry here in Bangladesh.
Thank you so much, Rakib Bhai, for your valuable speech. Actually, you highlighted the importance of climate services for aquaculture production and also to reduce the associated losses. So now I'd like to request also Mr. Alamgir, Director of Planning and Implementation, Krishibid Fisheries Limited, to share his insight. So Alamgir Bhai, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Rumana. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please.
First, I would like to thank Mr. Rakibul Hossain, Senior Scientific Officer at Fisheries Research Institute. He has, in very short and simple sentences, has given some idea that what we get in our last training program in the BMDA, and also what BFRI is going to undertake and what sorts of program is the BFRI is running nowadays. In fact, the training program what WorldFish Center led, and Rumana was also very much involved with the training program, that was really very useful and effective. Before the training program, we simply observed, we simply saw that how the climate factors affected our fisheries, our fish farms, our hatcheries, and other business farms. After the training program, I think it has opened our eyes. Now, we can think more that what should be the ways to take precaution to save our farms and hatcheries if any adverse climate factors appears. But at this stage, I would like to give some proposal to World Fish Center and the organizer that although we know that the climate factors very often affects our farms, our hatcheries, or in a broad sense the whole aquaculture system, but we need to quantify that if the situation is normal, in that case, how much financial benefit we get and how much our production raises. Compared to that, when any adverse situation occurs, then to what extent our farms, our production and our financial output being affected. So this sorts of comparison needs to assess and find out. I think there are a lot of scopes to undertake more research and more projects so that our farmers, our trainers, even researchers also should be involved in this sorts of program. So I propose that World Fish Center will think this proposal and will try to bring some more projects for Bangladesh condition. And the projects, they should include some financial matters, some economic matters, that how and to what extent our farms are being affected. If we know, if the farmers really see that this happens, this percentage of loss occurs if any sorts of climatological adverse situation appears. And also, World Fish Center may select some lead farmers and some lead institute for the farmers that they will demonstrate their technology. They will demonstrate their training that if you adopt these technology packages in relation to cope up climate factors, then this will be your monetary return. If you don't adopt, in that case, this amount or this kind of adverse situation you will have to face. So if a farmer can understand, or if a farmer says that this extent of difference of his benefit will come if he adopt climate factors in his technology packages or in all steps of his works, then he will definitely be interested and he will gladly accept your works. So I think this is all I thought. So thank you very much all.
Thank you, Mr. Alamgir, for sharing your thoughts and also for the suggestions. We will take your suggestions into account in our next training dialogue. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. So at this point, I see that we have 2 questions in our question and answer box. If the video is open and I am being watched, it's to Melody. So Melody, is the video you developed, is it published or yet to publish? So another question is there any peer-reviewed report on impact of climate change on freshwater aquaculture in inland capture fisheries in Bangladesh? If so, please provide reference. Yes, there are many, not many, very few impact reports on impact of climate change published by FAO and also some journal papers. We will post it on our chat box during the session. So Melody, do you like to answer that whether the video is available online?
Sure. The video will be available online very shortly, and we're happy to share the link with all the participants as soon as that's the case.
Okay, thank you. So now it's my turn. I will, sorry, that's my presentation. Sure.
Rumana, maybe we can just quickly check if there's any other question right now, and then we keep going, just maybe for a minute or two.
Yes, I can start my presentation, but so if in the meantime, if we have any question, we can answer at the end of the presentation. But at this moment, I do not see any question in our chat box or question and answer box.
Hello, Rumana. I can come in here. So
Yeah,
I'm seeing question in the chat box. Though Asaduzzaman sir, you have put your question in the chat box very shortly, but I'm seeing that you have put a very long comment in the chat box. Do you like to come in tell us your question? Then we can turn on your microphone. We have turned you on. Asaduzzaman sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peerzadi. The issue that I want to raise, and the reason I have come to this workshop, in fact, right now there is another workshop of mine, which is also very interesting to me, relevant for my work, but I have joined this one rather than that one. Precisely because I had been involved very much in the preparation of the updated Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan. And you know that the first action plan was done in 2008, 2009, and this is being updated now. The draft has been prepared this under the consideration of the government, but at the same time, we are also trying at the same time to update it as far as possible in terms of whatever is known and not known. And one of the large issues, major issues is, of course, food security, that we are looking into it. And for that, we are looking at the fisheries issues. And in Bangladesh, obviously, inland fisheries is very important. Marine fisheries too, but that's not that important yet. Unfortunately, in the world literature, you find mostly all kinds of explanation, discussion, reporting on marine fisheries, and not so much on the inland fisheries. Obviously, because in many of the countries where these research are done, inland fisheries is not that much important, but in Bangladesh it is. And we know during the last decade or so, aquaculture has taken off very much. And so that is one of the issues that we had to try to look into. Now, world fish literature and other literature that I have looked into, I found that there are general discussion about how fisheries might be affected and all of those kinds of things. I understand that. But then what had been the actual experience in Bangladesh, and how, what had been the problem that has been raised, and how those have been solved at all, if any. Now, when I look into that, I find very little Bangladesh specific literature, including done by WorldFish. That's becoming a bit unsettling, because when I looked into this, the climate services sort of thing, obviously that means that you have to, the climate services you are talking about is necessary if we know, and the farmers know, farmers certainly know, but they may not know the cause and effect kind of thing as the scientists do, that, so one of the things that have come up again and again, the life cycle changes that may have happened, the spawning problem that may happen because of the temperature rise and that. And in aquaculture, obviously, temperature rise becomes very important because the water is much shallower there. So my issue is how these issues have been at all analyzed, what had been the impact over the last 1 decade or so, or if not so much, what might be the impact in the future. Because, and then the adaptation issue comes up where these climate services and all this become very important. So the causation of the issues, I think this is something that one has to think about. And unless there is, you see, obviously this is not to be discussed at all level, but at a higher level, we must know what is going to happen, what is already happening, what is going to happen, and for what kind of fish species and that. If there are resilient fish species which might be cultured or not. These are some of the issues, adaptation issues that we have to advise the government. when we talked to the fisheries department, unfortunately, we drew completely blank. And some of the literature that we have, world fish, is mainly the global one, not so much specific to Bangladesh. And that had been one of my issues that I had tried to bring up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asad sir. So I would like to request Rumana and Melody to share some thoughts or reflect on this question and queries.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asaduzzaman. Yes, I agree with you that there are some, we have limitations on literature focusing the local issues or the regional issues. We have lots of literature on global aquaculture and fisheries, but locally or regional studies we have lacking on that part. For this particular research, I mean the climate services for aquaculture in Bangladesh, we did some of these things. We surveyed at field level. We covered 800 fish farmer household level survey during 2019 and 2020, and we have collected a wide range of information that what type of aquaculture operations are getting affected by different climatic variables and which climatic variables are affecting which aquaculture operations. So you may find some information in my presentation. Also, the report we published from our training dialogue, you can also get some of the information from there also, because we had a wide range of value chain actors there. They also identified some issues in line with specific climatic variables, how different aquaculture operations are getting affected, what type of management decisions we need to take. So so if you have a look at the presentation of my one and also our other presenters, you can find some information here as well, specific to Bangladesh. So that's my quick response to your question. So Melody, do you like to say something, or I will proceed with my presentation?
Yeah, just very briefly, I think it was a very, very great comment and very important comment. And I want to flag that actually it was interesting for us to start working on climate services for aquaculture, because it's something that not only there's not much information for Bangladesh specifically, but even around the world, the very vast majority of climate services projects are focusing on agriculture and not on aquaculture. And even when we had the initial discussions about starting working on climate services for aquaculture, the initial reaction that we got from several people and several donors was, well, if you can't prove that there's an impact, then why would we fund it? But at some point, if you don't start funding the research, then it's going to be hard to prove that there's an impact. So it's a bit of a vicious circle, but it was very exciting to start working on that in Bangladesh, also because aquaculture plays such a big role in Bangladesh and because it's not done much elsewhere either. So whatever we learn in Bangladesh can also become an example for other countries in the region and beyond. And so, yeah, so it's obviously the beginning, because there has been a lot less work than in other fields on climate services and aquaculture. And I think that's why really there's not much literature at this point. But we're hoping that by opening the conversation and by initiating this research, there can be more attention to it. So I think it would be fantastic if you're interested in keeping that conversation and seeing how it can potentially support some of the BCC SAP if there is any possibility.
Okay, thank you, Melody. So I will present the decision framework we recently developed to enhance climate services for aquaculture. I have already mentioned about CAFSA, the project we have been working, and our partners, so I'm avoiding explaining those. So first of all, I'd like to draw your attention on a few statistics on Bangladesh aquaculture, especially to highlight its importance. Bangladesh is identified as one of the most suitable regions for aquaculture in the world for its vast wetland resources. The country has the world's largest flooded wetland, the third largest aquatic biodiversity in Asia, and is extremely important for culture fish production. In addition to that, fish is the source of 60% animal protein intake of the country population demand. And fish has the lowest carbon footprint of any animal protein production in Bangladesh. However, at the same time, the country's freshwater aquaculture is highly vulnerable to climate impacts due to temperature and rainfall variability and extreme weather events as well. For brackish water production, the country is marked with the lowest adaptive capacity to cope with climate impacts. The graph also shows that agriculture, fisheries, and aquaculture sector have been experiencing 25% loss and damage due to climate impacts. So to gather an extensive knowledge on climate impacts on aquaculture in this line, we did an in-depth literature review. I have put some highlights here. I'm not going into detail, but if we summarize all this information, we can say both high and low temperatures and heavy rain and low rain or dry spell are the key climatic phenomena which are affecting different aquaculture operations. Particularly water quality management, feeding, fingerling, stocking, and harvesting. We also did FGDs for 3 value chain actors to know the prospective demand for aquaculture climate services. It reveals the interest of both small-scale fish farmers and intensive or advanced fish farmers. Also, the hatchery managers showed strong interest to have climate services. Besides this, we did a household level fish farmer survey in 4 districts, Khulna, Barishal, Patukhali, and Sylhet region, and collected a range of information from 800 small scale fish farmers on their fish farming practices, fish crop selection and management information, their knowledge on climate services, along with their responses on lead time and platforms for having climate services. So about almost 50% of the fish farmers across the study region preferred 7 days lead time. Regarding the climate information service platform, 80 to 90% fish farmers preferred a direct voice call as their preference for having climate services. So at this point, we have the fish farmers' response on climate services. We also have information from the literature review, which climatic variability is affecting which aquaculture operations and how these operations are getting affected. We also cross-check this literature review information from the fish farmers' survey information. However, what type of management decisions we can take to reduce the associated risks? So we identified a range of climate-sensitive management decisions through expert interviews. For example, high temperature plays a substantial role to intensify ponds' bacterial decomposition rate and decrease pH level, also imbalance dissolved oxygen and carbon dioxide concentration and accelerate the different harmful gases like ammonia and hydrogen sulfide gas. So these changes in pond water quality parameters create stress on fish physiology, thus reduce digestion capacity and food intake behavior, which sometimes result low survival rate. So to address these high temperature induced risks, the climate sensitive management decisions can be lime application to balance the pH level, ponds bottom racking to remove the toxic gases. We can use aerator when dissolved oxygen level drops. Feeding ratio can be reduced and fingerling stocking can be restricted. So similarly, we identified climate sensitive management decisions for cold spell, heavy rain, and also dry spell. So I'm not going detail through all this due to lifetime limitation, but we identified the climate sensitive management decisions for each climatic variables. So after careful scrutinizing these 4 tiers of information, I mean, from the FGD, literature review, expert interview, and fish farmer survey, we developed a decision support tool based on temperature and rainfall thresholds for grow-out phase of 4 widely cultivated and economically important fish species in Bangladesh. And these are tilapia, rohu, bagda, that is the saltwater shrimp, and Golda, the freshwater prawn. As the intended climate service is to support the fish farmers' decision-making approach, this timeline is selected for growth phase of each species. For example, tilapia and rohu, it is identified from May to November, while for bagda it is from March to June, and for golda from July to November. The conditions for the temperature decision tree are maximum and minimum temperature thresholds of each species. When the temperature goes above or below the critical limits of a particular species, the decision tree can support to decide the relevant climatic sensitive management decisions. Like above 32 degrees centigrade temperature will trigger advisories for pond water quality and feed management decisions of tilapia. Conversely, below 20 degrees centigrade temperature provides minimum temperature advisories for water quality management, feeding, and harvesting. So thus, fish farmers can make decisions on using aerator to promote oxygen level, managing pumps to irrigate the pond, and applying lime to control pH depending on their pond situation. So this decision tree will trigger advisories to reduce risks associated with temperature variability. And this is the decision tree based on rainfall thresholds. Fish species and timeline are similar as the previous one. However, the conditions are different. The temperature decision tree was based on two conditions, maximum and minimum temperature thresholds. However, the rainfall decision tree is based on three different conditions, and these are very heavy rain, and dry spell. If rainfall amount exceeds 88 millimeter per day during growth phase of the selected fish species, the decision tree indicates that fish farmers need to decide on protection measures for fish enclosures. During heavy rain, like when rainfall is more than 44 millimeter per day, the decision tree prescribes to decide on pond water quality and feed management. So during dry spell, that is when rainfall is less than 1 millimeter during pre-monsoon and post-monsoon, and less than 3 millimeter during monsoon for 5 consecutive days, fish farmers need to manage water supply. They can also decide on partial harvesting due to risks of disease outbreak, and also feeding as low or no rain most likely cause fish to less food intake. So this decision tree will trigger advisories to reduce risks associated with rainfall variabilities. So now what's next? We need to use this decision support tool or the decision framework or decision tree, whatever you say, on a suitable platform. We did an analysis on potential platforms to transfer climate services to fish farmers. I have highlighted Bangladesh Academy of Climate Services and CIMMYT, as we have already started working together. You have come to know that we have arranged a trading dialogue, and with CIMMYT, we are also working to integrate this decision support tool on their Advisory Climate Service platform. We will come to know in detail from our next speaker on this. So we have a few things yet at diagnostic stage, like air water temperature relationship. We know that Bangladesh Meteorological Department provides the air temperature forecast. However, for aquaculture climate services, we need to convert the air temperature forecast into water temperature. So WorldFish, CIMMYT, and IRI, we are working together to develop a model so that we can translate air temperature into water temperature. So we also need to work on the business model, because most of the climate services project, we see that after the lifespan of the project, the platform, most of the cases, the platform do not exist or in an operational condition. So we need to work on that also. And the variation in demand of aquaculture climate services among the small-scale fish farmers and the advanced fish farmers indicate that there is the need of capacity development of small-scale fish farmers for effective use of climate services to manage the risks in their day-to-day operations. And finally, the impact evaluation. Once the decision framework is successfully embedded on a specific platform, we can evaluate the impact value of aquaculture climate services in Bangladesh, which can help us to make decision finally to mainstream it strategically at policy level. So thank you all for your patience hearing. If you have any question, comments, or suggestion, please share it on the comment box or chat box. Now, I don't know whether I have time or not. Can I share the video?
I just wanted to jump in really quickly to say there were several questions about how farmers can have access to information about temperature, and I think the following presentation will help answer those questions, and if not, we can talk more at the end.
Okay, WorldFish also developed a video through a collaboration between USAID and WorldFish for Feed the Future initiative. So Tasfia, it's better to provide the link in the chat box so that participants can see it later on. We can move to the next presenter.
Okay, we are not playing it right.
No, we are not playing it.
Great, great. I'm providing it.
If we have time, we can show it at the end of all the presentations. Yeah.
Okay, great, great.
So I like to hand over to Amjath for his presentation on Advisory platform for aquaculture climate services. And Amjath is actually an agriculture economist working at CIMMYT-Dhaka. So Amjath, over to you.
Yeah, Rumana, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Amjath, and also can see your screen.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm starting from where Rumana already stopped. So my name is Amjath Babu. I'm an agriculture economist working at CIMMYT. What I'm trying to talk about is walk the talk. What Rumana has presented is about how we can develop a decision tree for creation of a aquaculture service. And what I am presenting is follow-up. That is how, in reality, we can create the aquaculture climate service for Bangladeshi farmers. And we are using a platform called Advisory, which is created by CIMMYT to do this task. So you can go to advisory.com and see how this platform is working. And I invite your feedback on already existing platform. But here, from Melody, you heard that there are 4 pillars of any climate service. That is the generation of climate information, then translation of this information into useful advisory, and the transfer of these advisory to the beneficiaries, and 4th is the use of this advisory. So in advisory, you'll see all these 4 pillars in action. And the first thing is the generation of the advice, the climate information itself. So what in advisory we receives the numerical weather model output from Bangladesh Meteorology Department. So this is a grid-based product. So we have developed algorithms to develop 5-day forecast of temperature and rainfall in every sub-district of all districts in Bangladesh. So one of the scientists who is involved in this development of this particular product is Dr. Carlo Montes. He is also with us today on another presentation. So if you are looking at a Wisely platform, what you will see is this projection for next 5 days for each Ubuzilla. This is the first pillar, that is the generation of climate information. The second pillar is the translation of this advisory into specific, this information into specific advisory. So here, what we do is using a decision tree, similar to what is explained by Rumana. So I'll give you an example in the next slide. So this is a decision making tree for lentil crop. In case of lentil, there are different stages of this crop existing in Bangladesh in different time period. For example, if you look at December 1st to 25, lentil will be mostly in vegetative stage. So what our algorithm does is searching for specific thresholds of temperature and rainfall. For example, if you see that the temperature is dropping in the next 5 days, less than 10 degrees Celsius, the algorithm will generate an advisory warning against possible diseases. Or in this similar way, we'll be getting advisory on maximum temperature or rainfall thresholds. So this is how it works. So why I explained it is, how we are developing these aquaculture advisories based on our experience in developing the crop advisory. After this translation work, this is fully automated. So once this 5-day forecast of temperature and rainfall is coming, this is automatically interpreted to different crop advisories currently in advisory, and then it is shared with extension officers, registered farmers, and also it's available as a map interface in web. So we use different platforms to reach farmers and extension agents currently. This is a model of advisory. So now I'll explain how we are intending to add the aquaculture service into advisory. So the task here is there is an additional task here, especially in aquaculture. That is, the air temperature has to be converted to water temperature for any interpretation. And development of a decision tree that includes fish-specific threshold temperatures and rainfalls, as well as development of advisories. That is already done. That's, you have seen that this part is done by WorldFish colleague, especially Rumana worked on it. And then we have this detailed information, at least for two fish species and 2 shrimp species. We have detailed decision trees as well as advisories. And we also worked on the air temperature problem. Surprisingly, there are very less research on air temperature to water temperature conversion in Bangladesh. So what we had done is we tried different models of air temperature and water temperature. What I can tell you is the best fit model is based on, we need a reference pond temperature information from various locations to practice this particular conversion. So what we are trying to do is to get regular data uploaded to our database from reference pond all over Bangladesh. And then we are able to use this information with 2 different equations. That means for minimum and maximum pond temperatures, that is already calibrated and it works quite well. But there are other models or other ways of doing the same thing. So we are still working on this. But this is one thing which I want to highlight. And second part is already explained by Rumana. This is the decision tree. So what advisory will do is it will search for certain threshold parameters. For example, 32 degrees Celsius maximum temperature or 20 degrees Celsius minimum temperature. If it is breached in any of the zillas or sub-districts in Bangladesh, if there is a particular species, for example, tilapia is existing within this time period, within this particular area, there will be an advisory triggered, and it may be on feeding rates, it could be on water quality adjustments like or temperature control measures like adding more water or adjusting water levels, or it could be on harvesting. So there could be different kinds of advisory which will be triggered by this, once the threshold is observed within the system at any sub-district. So that is the modus operandi here. And the work we are doing now is integration of the fish database. You can see that currently only 2 species of fish and 2 species of prawn or shrimp is included. but it can be expanded. It can be expanded to multiple species once we have the information on the thresholds as well as advisory. Once this activity is completed, then we can add into this database. We will all these 4 species for the time being, and we'll work on others. So next is adding the trigger parameters, that is the temperature as well as rainfall thresholds, and integrating the advisory. This will be in English as well as in Bangla language. This particular advisory will be available. So once these actions are completed, maybe most probably by March or April this year, this advisory will be ready for sharing with the farmers. So we will be doing evaluation of this service with farmers and extension colleagues. And by the end of this year, we expect that we will be understanding what's the impact of this aquaculture service for Bangladesh farmers. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Amjath, for your presentation on the advisory, how we will integrate the aquaculture decision framework in this and how it will work. And we have a few questions. I think we need to take those questions first, then I will move to the next presentation. So the question is, BMD generate and transfer climate info as a general, as a fish farmer, we actually need more formulated climate info based on aquaculture practices. So DOF and BFRI need more closely work in these regards. And this is, I didn't find any question here, but it may be a suggestion from Sultan Mahmoud. So I would respond to that, this one. And yes, we are working with DOF and BFRI closely on this. The expert interviews we did, we have specific persons involved in this interview process from Department of Fisheries and Bangladesh Fisheries Research Institute. So the decision tree, we developed this, we developed this decision tree based on the consultation with Department of Forestry and also Bangladesh Fisheries Research Institute. So we are in a conversation with them to how we can make it more precise so that the small-scale fish farmers can use this decision framework in their day-to-day operation. Also, to find to use this decision framework into an operational platform that will be useful for the fish farmers. And the other question is on the advisory. So how the fish farmers react to the advisory, not the fish farmers, how the farmers react to the advisory. Do the extension officers of concerned disciplines like agriculture, fishery, livestock know about this and help the farmers in understanding the forecast and predictions? Sorry, Amjath, do you like to respond on that one?
Thanks, Rumana. We are already in discussion, not in discussion. We are already trialing this advisory platform with a selected extension agents from DAE, and once this trial is completed, we will be expanding to all of the extension agents will be informed about advisory output, and they will be receiving SMS. As also, we are developing an mobile application which will send push notification to extension officers or whoever is installing that one. So we are this year, especially from next almond season, most probably we'll be having extended trials with the DAE personnel. So that is the development in that regard. I have seen another question on the scope of simulating growth and development of fishes depending on air and water temperature along with water carbon dioxide levels. We didn't do much work on water carbon dioxide levels, but what I want to say is that there is always scope to integrate sensors with the climate service. So we are working on proposals that is linking sensor-based data with the climate service that we are developing. So that is the next stage of this climate service. I can't disclose or I can explain much about it now, but there is a further scope of development of this climate service. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amjath. We will take the questions later on. We can move to our next presenter. So our next presenter is Carlo Montes. Carlo is an agricultural climatologist. He's based in CIMMYT in Mexico. So Carlo will present on developing an early warning system for aquaculture in Bangladesh based on seasonal forecasting of extreme temperature and rainfall events. So Carlo, next 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Rumana. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
My presentation, okay. So if I do this, it's okay, you can see
this is okay.
the slide. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for your presentations, Rumana and Amjath, because it's a good introduction to mine. Yes, I will present this work on developing that we did in trying to develop an early warning system for aquaculture in Bangladesh based on the seasonal forecasting of temperature, extreme temperature, and rainfall events. So this is a report from CIMMYT, WorldFish, IRI, and BMD. Yes, well, aquaculture is kind of natural activity in Bangladesh, given the conditions of a very wet country, you know, and culturally people are like prepared for that. And so actually the numbers of fish production and aquaculture shows an increase in time. So it's a successful activity actually in Bangladesh. However, the aquaculture is highly exposed to climate variability, and it's very likely that it will be very exposed in the future to even more because of climate change affecting production, infrastructure, and especially to small scale farmers. And this map we see interesting work from Islam 2019 that 20% of the surface has a very high vulnerability to climate variability and change. And they say also that the exposure of inland aquaculture is higher than coastal aquaculture because of fewer adaptation measures. So in this context, we tried, or in this work, what we address is the potential use of state-of-the-art seasonal forecasting for the development of an early warning system on high temperature and intense precipitation events that can assist pond aquaculture farmers in Bangladesh. We worked in Sylhet and Khulna, and these two divisions. According to the same study on vulnerability, these locations are classified or categorized as the moderate and high vulnerability to climate variability. In terms of the area, aquaculture is more important, more relevant in terms of area only in Khulna than in Sylhet. And these two locations, given that, well, we know that Bangladesh is not a very big country, but there are strong gradients in climate, and we see this that Sylhet and Khulna are quite contrasting, not in seasonality or general annual cycles of precipitation or temperature, but Sylhet is weather, and there's precipitation is higher and in Sylhet than in Khulna, and conversely, temperature is higher, both minimum and maximum temperature, seasonality, and the seasonal temperatures and annual temperatures are higher in Khulna. So that gives an interesting picture about two different locations. So we worked, first we had to define what is a high temperature event or a rainy event in Bangladesh. Based on the work that Rumana already presented, we defined, or they defined, because I didn't participate in that part of the work, a threshold value of daily precipitation of 44 millimeters and pond temperature, not air temperature. We work with air temperature, but I will show that how we decided to use air temperature instead of pond temperature. So the value defined as a threshold for warm days was 32 degrees. We use as observations, daily pond temperature, and also air temperature and daily rainfall from BMD stations in Khulna and Sylhet. We evaluated 5 general circulation models belonging to the North American Multimodal Ensemble project. More than 30 years of monthly data, monthly hindcast of the maximum temperature and precipitation. And 1 model from the Canadian Center of Meteorological and Environmental Prediction, 1 model from NASA, and 3 models from the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory, GFDL. The first thing was to bias correct these models because the biases are quite important, so quite big. So we remove that part of the error, I can say. So, and then we proceed to the forecasting approach. We choose 2 periods, May to July, like a pre-monsoon and monsoon, and then August to October, like monsoon, post-monsoon, and 1 month lead time initialization so the forecasting generated in April to try to predict May to July, and July for August to October. As I mentioned, we work with number of warm days and number of rainy days, which is daily. We need daily data for that. And GCMs provide monthly data. So we connected both scales using linear models. And as I said, also, we are interested in pond temperature, but we have records, long-term records from BMD and of air temperature. So the question was, what is the value that we can take from air temperature that can capture the variability that we are interested on in terms of pond temperature? We see this here, the time series of both air temperature and pond temperature, and the histograms show air temperature distribution when pond temperature was higher than 32, our threshold value. And we see that they're not very different. The 32 degrees in air records, air temperature, correspond to the 16th percentile in Sylhet and the 17th percentile in Khulna. So we decided to work with 32 as well from air temperature. So that was, from now we work with air temperature as a proxy of pond temperature. This is how we built the linear models to connect the daily scale with the monthly scale provided by GCMs. So here we see the relationship between observed, this is station data, mean maximum temperature on the top and the bottom, mean precipitation for the 3 months period that we are interested, and the number of warm days. And there is a strong linear relationship. So we took this, we took these linear models to use the monthly data provided by the seasonal forecasting. This is an example of number of warm days in Sylhet from May to July. So we have number of warm days as a function of mean temperature for this 3 month period. So in this case, from May to July, we took the seasonal forecasting generated in April to have a forecasting, a prediction of number of warm days for that 3 months period. This is the matrix of on the top the Spearman correlation, on the bottom the error or MSE of monthly temperature, the direct output from the GCMs. There's a wide range of values, both for correlation and error, from low to high. So for the different combinations, we have 2 locations, 2 periods, 2 variables, 5 models. And here we include the ensemble mean also, the average of the 5 models. So there is a high variability, but we see that the model provided from the Canadian Center of Environmental Prediction shows the best performance in terms of monthly values of precipitation and mean temperature. And here, what we did was to use the linear models as a proxy of daily values, both from monthly forecasting and monthly observations. And we see again, well, this is an index called index of agreement that goes from 0 to 1. 0 is no agreement, 1 is it's perfect agreement. It ranges for all the combinations from 0.15 to 0.82. That's the best performance we found, which is not bad. But also we are interested in having try in the future to implement an early warning system. So we evaluated what is the overall performance, or what is the model performing better compared to the others. And again, here in terms of the forecasting provided, or the forecasting of daily events estimated with the linear models, we see that it's the Canadian, the model from the Canadian Center that provides or gives the better results in terms of forecasting of both number of warm days, rainy days for Sylhet and Kulna. Yes, and all the combinations. So as general conclusions, we see that there is a possibility to link statistically through these linear models daily weather events, in this case, warm days and rainy days, and to seasonal climatology. We used 3 months climatology, or seasonal climatology. But the GCMs we used, that our GCMs are providing real-time forecasting today, have to be corrected first, corrected, because there are high differences and also among models, so we need to evaluate them. We see that there is one model among these 5 models that we evaluated that shows the best performance. And when we're thinking in an operational early warning system, GCMs are constantly updated in terms of parameterizations and initialization. So they have to be evaluated constantly in time. So we have to check because maybe in the future this model will not be the best one, for this specific application. And also thinking on an early warning system, the effective translation and transfer to users, it's a crucial step in the development of climate services in general. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Carlo, for your presentation on this air-water temperature relationship, and also the seasonal forecast and early warning system for aquaculture climate services. So we will take questions. Will we take questions at this moment, or we will move to the next presenter, because we have only one presentation left. I think we can do that presentation, then we take all the questions. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will stop sharing my screen and
So our next presenter is Binod Shethi. Binod is working as a research associate at WorldFish-Odisha. So he will present on potential platforms for climate services in Odisha, India.
Thank you, madam. Good morning to all. Can you see my presentation, my screen? Is it visible to you all, my
yes.
Screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. My presentation is on the potential platforms for climate information services for fisheries and aquaculture in Odisha. This is the information communication technique. I want to tell you about ICT. It works in 3 major actions: record data and information, and transferring the data and information into knowledge, which can be shared to all the beneficiaries and stakeholders. And another one is broadcast, communicate the data, information, and knowledge. The importance of ICTs in fisheries. It helps in developing socially and economically in the agriculture sectors and allied sectors. Used in different aspects like resource assessment, capture culture, and weather-based fish farming information, processing, and commercialization. Different other applications are there, like sonar, which helps in locating the fish, and another one, system, GPS system, which helps in navigation and locating the finding the location. Mobile phones are which helps in trading, information exchange, and emergencies. Radio as GPS system in the find and last subscription of information exchange, disseminating or exchanging the information of fishing communities. Next, Odisha. I would like to explain about the Odisha. How Odisha is different natural hazards. It is situated in the east coast of India, the Bay of Bengal. The geoclimatic conditions make the entire state vulnerable to different hazards. The coast and frequently affected by cyclones. Even major river systems create frequent floods. About 2/3 of total cultivated area is rain dependent. Drought poses a serious threat of monsoon. The day of monsoon is normally in this state. Some part of the state also Arctic risk zone. Some is also a potential state. And you can see from
Binod, we can't hear you. Would you please turn off your video? I think your internet connection is not stable, so that we can hear you well.
Part of the state also Arctic risk zone. You can see from this table that is it audible to you? Hello? 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 Hello?
Binod, we can hear you. We have turned your video off, but we can hear you. So please continue.
Okay. Thank you, madam. From this slide, I can tell you that in almost all the years, Odisha is facing different climatic-induced natural hazards. We can see that in the year of 1999, super cyclone was occurred. In that particular cyclone, according to the government officials, 9,887 people were killed. But according to the other NGOs and other informations, around 30,000 people were died in 1999. After that, the cyclone Fani, which was occurred in the year of 19, was the strongest one. You can see that during 1996 to 2020, 13 years of flood has been experienced in Odisha, 8 years of drought has been experienced, and 6 years of cyclone. We have surveyed some of the agencies which are involved in the process of ICT-based information disseminations in the state, like MKisan, which is a government-initiated web portal. We have discussed with the officials, but the problem is that they do not disseminate the information to the fishery sectors. So we are planning to collect the numbers and the contact details of the fishermen and the fish farmers of the state with the help of Directorate of Fisheries, so that we can create a separate database for the fishery sectors. And the types of information disseminated on the weather forecast is monsoon onset prediction, critical temperature, high-low temperature, dry spell, cold spell, heavy rain, cyclone and natural calamity, drought and flood. And currently, we are working with Reliance Foundation Information Services, as it is available. It is very widely reached to the fish farmers in the state. It is also disseminating the information to the fishery sectors. Like there are types of information disseminated on fisheries are pond preparation, fingerling collection and stocking, applying fertilizer, applying aqua medicine, feeding, harvesting, and climate info government schemes. And on the weather-based information, we are disseminating the onset of monsoon prediction and critical temperature high and low, dry spell, cold spell, heavy rain, natural calamity, weather-based crop advisory, interactive bombardment of data through application. They have some application like Machli app. Through that app, they are disseminating some of the informations. OUT is there, Odisha University of Agriculture and Technology. OUT is one of our partner. We have discussed with them, but we have not yet started disseminating the information with the help of OUT. IFCO Kisan Sanchar Limited is there. We have suggested them to send us a proposal for collaboration. Image pad, we have discussed with them. They have not yet started disseminating the information to the fishery sector. We are trying to create another database with the help of PAD platform. We had done some phone surveys in the districts of Cuttack, Jagatsinghpur, Kendrapada, Puri, Marvans, and Kalahandi and Baleswar districts of Odisha. And it is we revealed from the survey that cold spell is highly required for the many part of the farmers of many parts of the states. After that, high temperature, monsoon, and heavy rain. But the most required information they need is a cold spell, which is very helpful, which will be very helpful to them. Then we have discussed with the how which information is how they prefer to get. Mostly, it is revealed that heavy rainfall and natural disaster, they need it in first or second preferences. Onset of monsoon is very important, but heavy rainfall and natural disaster is the most required one. The mode of disseminating the informations we have discussed with them. Most of the farmers say that they need the information with the direct voice call, and after that SMS will be very good for them, because most of the time they are busy in the fish farming ponds and other agricultural activities. When they will get time, they can check the SMS or different through mobile app WhatsApp groups. They will get the SMS and can take some decisions with the help of those forecasts. These are the findings we have got from the surveys. With the monsoon onset information, they would help. They would take this forecast in pond preparation, fingerling collection, fingerling stocking, fertilizer application, and aqua medicines. With heavy rainfalls, there are many problems they are facing. Like they want to take the distance, like cleaning the bushes and small trees and other waste near the pond, and lowering the water level will be done so that when the external water enters the fish farming pond, the water will not overflow. Dikes, inlet, and outlet will be repaired if needed. Liming will be done aftermath of the heavy rainfall. Biosecurity dating will be done around the pond so that in heavy rain, the fishes will not washed away from the pond. In emergency, the bigger size fishes will be harvested and sold to in the market if necessary. And the dry spell, most of the people are saying that in dry spell they are not facing many problems, as most of the farmers are having borewell system and other canal irrigation system, so that they get some water. They get water from at that situation. So dry spell doesn't affect their productivity. Cold spell, during cold spell, as fish, the feed consumption is getting reduced, so the growth of the fishes are also getting reduced. So they need to take more precautions in this time period. So they want to take this liming will be done in a regular interval. This kind of steps they will take. Liming will be done. Cefax and zeolite will be applied. Betadine and turmeric will be applied. Borewell water will be supplied so that the water level and the temperature of the water can be maintained, and the upper surface of the pond would be cleaned so that the sun rays can reach the bottom and maintain the temperature of the pond. High temperature, during high temperature, they face some of the problems, like feeding will be some farmers saying that feeding will be rise, and some farmers are saying feeding will be less. So with the forecasting of high temperature, they will do rotation of the water will be done with the help of aerator and pump to maintain the water temperature and the DO level of the pond water. Borewell water will be poured to maintain the water level and water temperature. The amount of feed supplied will be high as the consumption of the fishes will rise during summer days. Most of the farmers said that during high temperature, the feed consumption will be high. These are the snapshots of some messages we have disseminated with the help of M-Kisan web portal and Reliance Foundation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Binod. So thank you for your presentation, and we have got the flavor from from Odisha climate services platforms, and how the fish farmers' response was on different climate sensitive management decisions. So I'd like to hand over to Amjath for moderating the question and answer session. So we are running out of time, so we have like 10 minutes, sorry, it's 20, yeah, 10 minutes for her question and answer session. We already answered some of the questions, but we can go for the...
And we also have just 2 minutes for Shammunul as well.
Oh, Melody, sorry, it was not in the... Okay, Shammunul, do you like to... if you can cover it within 2 minutes, please go ahead, because we are already running out of time.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Shammunul Islam. I'm working as a consultant in ACTODAY project of IRI. We are also researching on converting air temperature to pond water temperature, but we are using a mechanistical model. So the assumption is, in physical world, water temperature is mainly driven by solar irradiance, water surface back radiation, evaporative heat transfer, net atmospheric radiation, effective diffusion of heat at different volume elements of the pond, wind speed, wind direction. So we were thinking that maybe if we can consider all these things into a model and then try to convert the air temperature to water temperature, give us a good result. So we followed a paper by Culberson et al. And we are trying to simulate this process by considering the net heat flux of a pond in 3 different layers. So the pond is considered as 3 different layers. One is the top layer, the middle layer, and the bottom layer. So we are using 2 years of pond temperature data recorded for 2 ponds, one in Khulna and another in Sri Mangal. And thanks to WorldFish and BRAC, we have this data. But unfortunately, the simulation that we have run so far, we have got output, but this is not really consistent enough to share with you the output. So hopefully we'll be very soon able to get a very good consistent result and share that with you. Thank you. That was from me.
Yeah, thank you, Shammunul, for your very quick response on this air water temperature modeling part from IRI. Thank you so much. So Amjath, I'm handing over to you. Yeah.
Thanks, Rumana. So one question what I've seen in the chat box is about the salinity issues, whether we can provide information to farmers on salinity. But for the time being, we are not capable to do this. We don't have any salinity projection models available for Bangladesh. If it is there, we could have done that. But of course, we can develop other projects, or as there is a demand for this, increasing demand for salinity measurement and testing, as well as adaptation measures. We could work on that, and I propose, that we may take up in the future such projects so that we can answer to this question. And what I want to ask one question to Carlo, what do you think about seasonal forecasting application for development of climate service? What are the limitations, or what are the benefits or advantages of using subseasonal or seasonal forecast for early warning system? How you see it?
In my opinion, limitation is the forecasting itself, because the forecasting in regions like Bangladesh is very challenging. The climate system, I can say climate system, like all the dynamics, the monsoon season and everything that is incorporated into a physical model, it's complex. So our experience show that there are variables that we can say something on temperature and other variables like precipitation that the forecasting is quite challenging. IRI has a lot of experience doing that, using also statistical approaches for seasonal forecasting there. And yes, it's a very big challenge, and it's the forecasting itself. So that's I think because there are other regions in the world where the signal of global drivers like El Nino or I don't know any other large scale driver, it's higher. The signal is higher in Mediterranean regions. I don't know if you see the global context, but those signals are not very strong in regions like South Asia and especially in Bangladesh, because I think in India the predictability is a bit higher. So it's a huge challenge. But the models at the same time, the physical models, like the set of models that we evaluated in this work, are constantly, they're being improved all the time. So the statistical models maybe will not improve very much because the El Nino will not improve the signal in Bangladesh, but the models maybe they're in development. They change. They always change. It's a constant work of improvement of parameterizations, resolutions, the physics of the model. So I think also there are big projects today like the NMME, the North American. There's a new version that it's being evaluated now, and that will provide daily data, so daily forecasting in a seasonal scale. So it's an experiment now. It's an experimental, stage. But in the future, I think they will provide better results.
Thanks a lot, Carlo. So next question I'll ask to Melody. So what do you think about future climate services in Bangladesh? What is your expectation? What issues you are foreseeing, or what advantages, or what kind of future you can actually think of?
Thanks, Amjath. It's a big question. I think it's great to see all the interest here on aquaculture. So we'll definitely keep the research on that. I think it's going to be interesting to connect more with BFRI and Department of Fisheries as we have more results on the research with CAFSA, and seeing how we can potentially explore how to better communicate that kind of information to farmers, because I know a number of people were asking about that. There's also a big interest in climate services for agriculture. So if there's a way to develop things in that direction and then to connect it to aquaculture, that would also be interesting. DAE has a lot of people on the ground that are working with farmers, and a lot of those farmers are also doing aquaculture. So, there are a lot of avenues to explore, but of course it depends on what are the needs and what stakeholders are interested in. And so happy to keep the conversation going with the participants if they want to keep talking to us.
Thanks, Melody. The next question is to Essam. Do you see any deficiencies, or what achievements, what the work done so far within CAFSA? What's your take on it? Thank you. You are mute.
How about now? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
No, thank you very much. I'll be very brief for that question. I think this session has been very enlightening for me. Learning about this tremendous progress being done in partnership with all the partners involved, I think is really, really encouraging. For me, I think it is a classic example of about how does one manage risk. And to manage risk, of course, we need information and knowledge, usable information to be made available and utilized by the producers. And because these producers who we're dealing with, the small-scale aquatic food producers, they face critical decision making on a daily basis, be it, as we were saying today, be it regarding feeding, stocking, harvesting, etc., which can endanger their productivity hugely. So I think the significance of this kind of work, I can emphasize more, is hugely beneficial. If I mean, of course, we have to fine tune the knowledge in terms of, there's so many questions raised about, the conversion ratio, or, how air temperature affects the water temperature, and thereby affects, the productivity and the salinity, acidity, etc. All these factors can come together and be made accessible through the excellent examples of platforms that we saw today, and be of use by the small-scale producers. Having said that, I think the question for me still is, what next, right? So we've done this amazing work, this great work, which we will continue to fine-tune it, but how do we make sure this is sustainable beyond the project period? So I think the focus, now should be, we're working with partners, particularly with the government of Bangladesh and other private sector agents, to work with them to ensure the sustainability of this kind of work beyond the project period. And I generally believe if this is successfully taken up in the future, it's going to make a huge difference, particularly for small-scale producers. So in a nutshell, that's what I was, mostly sort of, taking in all this information, but also thinking about, what needs to be done in the future. Yeah, but on that note, I would like to thank all of you today, including Rumana, Melody, Hossain, Alamgir, Amjath, Carlo, and Binod, yourself. Thank you so very much.
Excellent, Essam. So, Rumana, I wanted to ask you a last question, but if you have time, please answer, following what Essam told us, the future of climate service systems, what do you think about, what surprised you most when you started this work, and now how you see it developing into something bigger than what we are doing currently, even though our work is an early system, climate service system. So there is a lot of scope to improve. What's your thoughts on it? Thank you. Rumana, are you there?
Sorry, just in case, I think we've lost Rumana.
I think then I'm stopping it here. Essam, I think you need to conclude the session. Thank you.
Okay. No, I think I wouldn't add much more than what I said. I think apart from, again, re-emphasizing the need to fine-tune this work together, and there's so much interest that was expressed by the participants as well to come forward and talk to us, and hopefully in the foreseeable future we'll see this implemented in Bangladesh and making a difference on the ground. Thanks so very much for this excellent session, and huge thanks to the participants and the organizers, of course. So thank you and have a great day.
Thanks to all.
Thanks, everyone.